Have you noticed that some of the gripping headlines of today's news could be headlines from the news decades ago? Huge deficits, bailouts, war in Afghanistan, war on drugs? For example, trade to Libya halted. President calls Gaddafi barbarian. President Ronald Reagan made headlines with that comment in 1986. Another example, $166 billion taxpayer bailout of savings and loan industry voted by Congress from 1989. Plans to withdraw from Afghanistan are made by the USSR in 1988. Welcome. My name is Tamara, and I'm honored and excited to host Access News. Access News is for everyone, whether deaf, hearing, or hard of hearing. I will be interviewing some amazing guests who will share stories from Austin and beyond. My colleague, Don Miller, will also join us to share new and enlightening information about America's founding documents. You have no doubt noticed that I'm deaf, and I communicate using American Sign Language, also known by its abbreviation ASL. ASL has its own grammar, history, and culture, just like other languages. But unlike other languages, ASL is purely a visual language with no written component. English is a second language for most people who are deaf. The person voicing for me is Jennifer Stoker, who is a certified interpreter and will be joining us on the set. Now, there seems to be a growing need in our democracy for civic learning and a better understanding of civil responsibility. There also seems to be a need for quality, accessible news and information, which fosters community engagement and participation. The creation and sharing of information will lead to the betterment of our community. Access News seeks to fill that need. We're excited to have with us on Access News Michael McCaul, Congressman from the 10th District of Texas. We will learn about his work in Congress, about cyber wars, drug wars, terrorism, America's energy needs, and more. Congressman Michael McCaul is now serving his 4th term representing Texas's 10th District in the U.S. Congress. The 10th District stretches from Austin to the Houston suburbs. Congressman McCaul is a member of the House Committee on Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs, Science, Space and Technology, and Ethics. He's also the founder and co-chair of the Congressional High Technology Caucus, among others. He's married, has 5 children, including triplets. Thanks so much for joining us today, Congressman.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be a part of this kind of historical type of interview, and thanks for having me.
Great, thank you. Let's go ahead and begin talking about your work in the high technology issues. I understand that high technology issues include cyber wars, cyber attacks, cyber threats. So, can you please explain a little bit more about the significance of cyber wars on the nation's security?
Well, if you ask Admiral Mullen, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, what the greatest emerging threat is to the United States, he'll tell you cyber warfare, cyber attacks. we have great offensive capability in this country in terms of what we can do in cyber operations. That kind of technology in the wrong hands could do great destruction. If you look at denial of service attacks on our critical infrastructures, and what do I mean by that? I'm talking about power grids, financial sectors. Virtually everything that's tied to the internet is vulnerable to a cyber attack. And in fact, every federal agency has been hacked into, including the Pentagon. So imagine people are caught stealing paper files out of the Pentagon. It'd be all over the front page of the Washington Post. And yet, in the cyber virtual world, that is happening every day. So that's something that I've been working very hard to basically harden our federal networks, and also in the private sector protect our critical infrastructures from a cyber attack that could bring down the power grids and cripple the nation.
Yeah, I really understand. Thank you for sharing that information. What do you think is a greater threat to the American security? High-profile cyber attacks like the ones you just mentioned, the Pentagon and so forth, or the same kind of attack like a 9/11 type attack? What do you think is more of a threat?
Well, cyber 9/11 or cyber Pearl Harbor is what we're most concerned with, but really you see cyber attacks on three levels. One, in the criminal world, just intellectual property theft, and then countries like China, really espionage, stealing information. We've had tremendous amounts of data stolen from our federal networks. Like I said, the Pentagon, NASA has been hacked into, really to steal, intellectual property and espionage. Then the cyber warfare is the last piece, which I think the military is most concerned with because of the devastation it could cause. If a country like Iran, for instance, got the cyber warfare capability that we have in the United States, they could really do tremendous damage. And I think that's what we want to, that's what I've been working very intensely on to make sure that doesn't happen.
I'm happy you brought up the military, because I was also wondering if you predict any possible military involvement with a situation like this, our military related to cyber wars.
Oh, sure. I mean, our military, basically NSA, the Department of Defense, and Department of Homeland Security are the three main principal agencies involved with this. Our Department of Defense and military have that tremendous capability to conduct cyber warfare. And then in defense of the nation, the Department of Homeland Security has a primary mission to protect the nation from a cyber attack. And I think it's important that they coordinate with both NSA, National Security Agency, and Department of Defense that have that tremendous capability. They're great things. The internet has brought us great things, but it also brings great threats that we need to protect against.
So now let's talk a little more about the internal security. We have the war on drugs that we've been dealing with in America for many years. What are your thoughts on, what if we went ahead and educated the American public related to drugs, and we legalized drugs, and then in turn we're able to tax the drugs and earn revenue for the economy? What are your thoughts on that?
I've focused a tremendous amount of energy on the situation in Mexico, the drug cartels. Specifically, I was with Sheriff Garcia in Houston yesterday, talking about the presence of the drug cartels in Harris County. They're here in Austin. I think a lot of people think it's only a Mexican problem. The drug cartels are here, and they're in 270 cities across the nation. And it presents a tremendous threat, I think, to the United States in terms of the distribution of drugs, but also the violence that they could be bringing into the United States as well. We don't want to see what's happening in Mexico with 40,000 people being killed. We don't want to see that start to happen in the United States. So the issue of legalization of drugs, it's very controversial. It's something I have examined. I think that a lot of people think if you just legalize marijuana that the whole thing goes away. And the fact is, you would have to legalize everything. I mean, all the narcotics, whether it's heroin, cocaine. I have 5 little children, and I'm not sure the American people are ready for that, although I think it's an interesting debate that we should have. I will say that I think it's important for those who do use drugs and consume them. And when I meet with the Mexican Congress, as I do every year, they point the fingers at us saying you're driving the demand for the drug wars. And I think it would be an important message to send to casual drug users that when you do this, you are financing these very violent operations, and show them the the graphics of what's happening in Mexico in terms of decapitations, people being burnt alive. And really, when you buy cocaine off the street, you're financing this violence and these drug wars and the killing of innocent people.
In summary, with national security issues, what do you feel is more of a threat to American security? Terrorism or the national debt, and as it increases?
Very good point. I know that, not to quote Admiral Mullen again, but he stated that the debt was one of the greatest national security threats that we have, and I believe it is as well. I think when you're approaching a $14 trillion debt, financed mainly by countries like China, I think you're putting the national security of the nation at risk. That is probably the most important issue for this Congress, is how are we going to deal with this national debt? Are we going to increase the debt ceiling? How are we going to bring this debt down for future generations? My father was served in World War II, flew on a B-17 over Nazi Germany, the greatest generation, handed down a better America to me and my generation. And I think that is the responsibility of every generation, is to hand down a better America to the next. I'm concerned with my 5 children and the next generation. What kind of America are we going to hand down to them? That's why bringing this debt down is so important. We can't hand down $14 trillion in debt to them.
Great. Thank you for all the information. We're going to go ahead and take a break now, if you don't mind. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Hi, I'm Don Miller. As a featured segment of Access News, we'll discuss elements of the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, and how they relate to America and you. How these important founding documents relate to all of us. We, the people. These documents were created to perform specific functions. The Declaration of Independence, written in 1776, was drafted and sent to King George III of England, requesting independence from British rule and offered reasons America wanted her independence. The United States Constitution, written in 1787, created and defined a new federal government that would establish the framework by which the American people should govern themselves. And the Bill of Rights, written from 1789 through 1791, stated the basic rights of we, the American people. As part of our civic learning segments, Access News will explore the meaning of a justified revolution, the difference between a federal government, a state government, and local governments, and what does it mean to have rights? We know the expression, "This is a free country." Does that mean we are free to do whatever we choose? No, not at all. With great rights comes great civil responsibility. We'll also explore the workings of the 3 branches of government: the executive branch, the President of the United States, the legislative branch, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. Together they are known as Congress. The judiciary branch of government, which is the federal court system in place to peacefully resolve disputes. We'll profile people known as our founding fathers, the individuals credited with creating our founding documents. People like George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, George Mason, Patrick Henry, and many others. We'll look at some of the difficult compromises necessary to ratify the Constitution, as well as some of the challenging and sometimes controversial issues faced by the United States Supreme Court and the American people. We'll explore all this and more in civic learning segments we call A More Perfect Union. For Access News, I'm Don Miller.
Thank you again for joining us here on Access News. Related to the oil companies. They've reported enormous profits, and we're wondering, should they be allowed to continue to take advantage of tax breaks through tax credits?
Well, I think there is it's easy to demonize, they call it big oil, and it's easy to demonize any successful company. I try to get off that way of thinking in terms of, we want success in America. We want companies to be successful. We want them to, making a profit's not a bad thing. It's not evil. And I think if companies can make a profit, they can create more jobs and hire more people, and that's good for America. So I don't think we should be penalizing any particular segment of the economy and picking winners or losers and saying that, this is all evil, when actually, the energy companies are doing good things, and they're creating energy. They want to create more energy in the United States, and I think we ought to let them do that. I don't think we ought to be demonizing and penalizing certain companies over others in the United States. And I know that's politically, some politicians can score a lot of points by doing that. I just don't play that game.
I understand. Don't blame you for that. I know there's a lot of different, perspectives on that issue. As a congressman, you're a person of great influence. Access News, one of our goals is to really encourage our viewers and allow them to be able to make informed decisions. And in many ways, you're a source for that. What's your advice to someone who's a newcomer to the political world about how they make a good decision on which party to join?
Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we put too much influence on the parties, and elected officials let the parties control them. George Washington in his farewell address warned against partisan politics and foreign entanglements. Those are the two things he warned against. And I think he was, to some extent, very right about that. Of course, Jefferson and Adams started the two parties, but I think I would like to see an America where we get more away from the party system and vote more for the person. And I think a lot of people they're more independent thinking, and they don't want to just do exactly what the parties tell them to do. And I think a lot of elected officials feel that way as well. But I will say, for anybody who wants to get active, I chose my own. Public service is important to me. My father served in World War II. I wanted to serve the public. I served in the Justice Department, Public Integrity Section, counterterrorism. That was my way of serving the nation. And then when this district opened up, I responded to what I thought was a higher calling. I don't think public service is a bad thing. I think it's been given a bad name, but I think it's a noble profession. I still believe that by serving the public, it's a noble profession. And so I think for anybody who's interested in getting involved, I think public service, getting involved in public service in your community, locally in Austin with a cause that you really champion, is a great way to start getting involved. Politics involves everything in your life, and I think getting involved in public service, whether it's at a local level or federal, is a great way to get into the system.
That's exactly what civil responsibility is all about, I suppose. How do we encourage people to have a civil conversation? It seems that people are always arguing. How do we have a civil conversation about hot topics?
I think the tone and civility needs to be restored to the American politic. I was on Katie Couric's show right after Gabby Giffords was shot. I was very concerned. She's a friend of mine. I was very concerned about her safety. She would tell me about her race and the threats to her, and I saw other members going home to very hostile, angry audiences. And I think that there are certain people in the media that like to whip up this anger and this uncivil tone. And I believe that's one of the great challenges that we have. We're the leaders in the Congress. They shouldn't be controlling us. We should be leading by example and trying to tone down this rhetoric that becomes so toxic and so poisonous, and try to restore some civility to politics. I mean, having said that, it's as old as Thomas Jefferson's race. I mean, you look at the campaign back then, and it was these campaigns can get very hostile and uncivil. But I do think that's a great challenge that we have as leaders, is to try to restore some of that civility. And I think most Americans, I think that's what they really want out of their elected officials.
Thank you, and I agree. I really want to say thank you again for joining us today on Access News. I'm wondering if you have anything that you'd like to share additionally.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my support, and I got federal funding for the school for the deaf and the blind, and what a great cause that is to champion. And I've been also involved a lot with childhood cancer issues. I chair the Childhood Cancer Caucus. My wife's on the board at MD Anderson, and we have a summit every year where we bring the top pediatric oncologists together in the nation, whether it's St. Jude's or MD Anderson, Dell Children here, and talk about what can we do in the Congress, what kind of legislative agenda can we have that can advance a cure, for childhood cancer. We lose more children to childhood cancer than any other disease or any other, accident. And I think we ought to be really leading, in this effort. We're going to bring the pharmaceutical companies in as well, which I think is very important. How can we incentivize them to, in this race for the cure for childhood cancer, how can we incentivize them to find better drugs to treat children that have cancer? One of the saddest things I've had to do is go through these hospitals and see children who are dying, or talk to the parents who have already lost their children to childhood cancer. And I look forward to, hopefully in my lifetime, seeing a cure where we won't have those conversations anymore. And then finally, technology has been living in Austin. I was very pleased to get the High Tech Legislator of the Year award this year. I've been a real champion for the high tech agenda, whether it's the R&D tax credit, whether it's getting a high-skilled workforce here in the United States with the tech companies. And I think technology, when I talk to kids and I go in the schools, I'll bring an astronaut from NASA, and their eyes light up, and technology is really the solution to so many of our problems that we have, whether it's healthcare, security, and the more we can advance this technology, the better quality of life that we'll create for the American people. So I'm just a real champion for the technology companies and the cause, and I want to do everything I can to make sure that they stay here in the United States and not go somewhere else. And we need to incentivize them to stay here in the United States, create the jobs here in the United States. And I think there's great promise and great hope and opportunity that technology can bring to this nation.
Thanks again, Congressman McCaul, for visiting us at Access News. You may learn more about the work of Congressman McCaul at www.house.gov and at our website, accessnews.us, where you may ask questions and share your comments and opinions. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. One beautiful thing about America is that we, the people, have power. The more we know, the better decisions we can make. For Access News, I'm Tamara, and that's Austin.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Executive producers Devorah Ben-Moshe, Ken Hurley. With funding from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation through the Knight Community Information Challenge. Supported by the Austin Community Foundation, fostering philanthropy in Austin for 35 years. The Austin Community Foundation, for now and forever. Created and written by Devorah Ben-Moshe, Ken Hurley. Hosted by Tamara Sutier-Ocuto. Interpreter for Tamara Sutier-Ocuto, Jennifer Stoker. Segment host for A More Perfect Union, Don Miller. Voicing for Don Miller, Ken Hurley. Crew. Producer Linda Latowski, Director Editor Orlando Lopez, 3D Animation Doug Gray, Technical Director Carla Saldana, Director of Photography Brian Blake, Assistant to the Producer Susan Harper, Original Music Aaron Jake, Camera Doug Gray, Tim O'Neill, Ross Wilsey, Production Sound Mixer Aaron Jakes, Teleprompter Operator Brandon Taj Mora. Additional crew, photographers Eve Granick, Devorah Ben-Moshe, intern Brandon Taj Mora, additional interpreters Jacob Stacy, Tracy Hughley, Jessica Graves, website developed by Electric Leaf, Jonathan Braden, closed captioning provided by CPC, closed captioning and subtitle services. Special thanks to Susan Murnett, Lisa Williams, Mary Ben Ramsey, Monica Williams, Janice Kelklar, Paula Lang, Jeff Garvey. Claire Bugan, Bobby Guerrera, Russell Harvard, Cynthia Foss, Bill Stotesbury, Caitlin Mack, Yitzhak Ben-Moshe, Bobby Nord, Kenneth Gladish.